Central Asia has been attracting adventurers since the times of Marco Polo. In their notes, medieval mavericks filled this semi-mythical area, the world's end, with fantastic creatures and unprecedented miracles and riddles. To this day, this mysterious region attracts Western tourists with its landscapes and biological diversity. Together with the Outdoor KZ TV expedition, you will travel to the most picturesque corners of Central Asia, get acquainted with its flora and fauna, and immerse yourselves in the everyday life and traditions of the people living in the wild. As a part of the Kazakh Tourism National Company expert group, the Outdoor KZ TV expedition team will go to California, Nevada and Arizona. Get acquainted with the work of wildlife biologists of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, as well as will take part in the radio monitoring of the bighorn sheep population and visit the national wildlife areas of Mojave and Marble in California. We will hear the interesting story of bighorn sheep preservation, which was on the verge of extinction in the beginning of the 20th century. We will also meet the leading U.S. game managers to see whether their experiences could be useful for preserving the Kazakhstan's argali. On the way, we will make a short stop in Las Vegas to see how the Sin City has changed since the days of Hunter Thompson. Two organizations invited us: Safari Club International and Wild Sheep Foundation. The main objective of our trip is to have several working meetings with the representatives of U.S. nature protection organizations. We also plan to share our wildlife preservation experiences. We want to learn how they organize and manage wildlife tourism in the States, how wildlife biologists work, and what procedures, norms and laws exist regulating specially protected areas. In order for us to be able to see it all with our own eyes, our American partners organized several trips to national parks, wildlife areas and the so-called wilderness areas, which are basically untouched wildlife land plots. This is one of the categories of land use that they have in the US. From the small town of Barstow in the San Bernardino County of California, we are heading to the Marble Mountain Wilderness area in the Mojave Desert. Its name comes from the Indian tribe Mojave. The huge plain of 35,000 square kilometers occupies the southern part of the state of Nevada, the southeastern part of California, and the northwest of Arizona. The desert doesn't appear lifeless at all. We are surrounded by thousands of plants unknown to us for the most part, although we immediately recognized two tree species. One look is enough to remember the Joshua tree or Yucca brevifolia forever. The Mormons call Yucca the tree of Joshua, the son of Nun, because its branches resemble praying hands raised to the sky. Perhaps the tree reminded the Mormons of the adversities and deprivations they had to face escaping from religious persecutions in the blast Utah to the lifeless deserts of California. There are 20 different yucca species, each of which is pollinated by a separate species of pollinators. Thanks to this great adaptation capacity, yucca has perfectly fitted itself in severe desert conditions. This plant that looks like a mix of palm tree and cactus is also a yucca and is called the Spanish dagger. For the first time, it was described in 1536 by the Spanish conquistador Cabeza de Vaca in his book about the adventures in Indian captivity. The life story of this person is enough for a dozen fascinating westerns. At first, he as a slave was sold several times from one tribe to another, but then Cabeza, successfully utilizing the basic medical knowledge and conjuring the Indians, became a famous healer and magician. Eventually, he managed to return to Spain and even invented cities full of gold and diamonds. The Spanish king at the time really liked the book as it helped to recruit even more conquistadors to go to the New World. Near Yucca there grows a bush rather familiar to us. It is Teresken or Krasheninikovia. We are in the Sari-Yasik-Atirau Desert in Almaty region. Terasken is one of the ordinary inhabitants of Central Asian deserts. And here we see the beautiful Terasken berries. As you can see, Terasken in the Mojave Desert is exactly the same as our own Terasken. In the Marble Mountain Wilderness, we're joined by Danielle Glass and Ashley Evans, biologists of California Fish and Wildlife Service. They are studying the reproductive behavior of bighorn sheep. This exact location is within the borders of the Joshua Tree National Park and enjoys wilderness area. This category of especially protected areas does not have a semantic analog in our practice and can be translated as untouched wild land. This basically means that the government has reserved this territory for recreational purposes. That is, so that Americans could use it to enjoy resting, hunting and fishing. Tourists and hunters have to strictly follow the rules of the area, ensuring its maintenance in the primitive wilderness condition. No roads, no buildings, and even no tourist facilities, as the main objective is to ensure that this area remains wild and undeveloped. This is not a place for those who like comfort, but for those looking for an opportunity to take a break from the overwhelming civilization. In the US, there are plenty of such nature admirers, over 20 million of hunters, fishermen and eco-tourists.
Alright, this is Francine and Ashley. Audrey, nice to meet you.
And a goat.
Domestic goat.
Yeah, and it's so it's for like for horse riding.
No, it's for forbid husband.
Thank you very much.
My name is Danielle Glass. I work for California Fish and Wildlife for the Desert Bighorn Sheep program. So now I'm going to show Becher from Kazakh tourism, our bighorn sheep up on the hill. If you look through the glass, you can adjust it, and they're right up.
Through the filled glass, we can indeed see a couple of bighorns at a distance. It is too far and our operator wants to get a bit closer.
For most of the year, split into groups. The rams are in one group, the mountain, because it's good escape terrain where they can hide from predators.
This female, male.
So the males or rams right now are in different groups. They are spread out from the ewes and the lambs.
Hi, my name is Ashley Evans. I am a desert bighorn sheep biologist in the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I really enjoy doing desert bighorn sheep work because they're really interesting to watch through spotting scopes or binoculars. They tend to be very skittish, but when you're able to watch them from far away, you're able to observe their natural behaviors. The lambs, for example, the small young animals will play together or run around or hop up on rocks. And it's really amazing how well the bighorn sheep are able to climb steep hillsides and hop on rocks.
Biologists analyzed the bighorn's mitochondrial DNA and concluded that all species and subspecies of mountain sheep occurred from a single ancestor that had once lived in the mountains of northern and central Asia. This means, if we may say so, that Aragali is the primogenitor of all mountain sheep in the world. It is also the ancestor of domestic sheep. In the course of evolution, mountain sheep split into two big groups: mountain sheep per se, which include Aragali and Mouflons, and snow or bighorn sheep. About 750,000 years ago, the ancestors of American mountain sheep crossed the Bering Land Bridge and spread across North America down to California and northern Mexico. The thin-horn sheep or Dall's sheep occupied Alaska and northern Canada, while bighorns settled in southern regions. The bighorn's subspecies structure is rather conditional, apparently due to extremely weak genetic barriers between subspecies. At present, the scientists distinguish 7 of them. Kamchatka chubuk, Okhotsk snow sheep, Yakut snow sheep, Norilsk sheep, California or Sierra Nevada bighorn sheep, Rocky Mountains bighorn, and desert bighorn.
The conservation of bighorn sheep and desert bighorn sheep in North America is a conservation success story that shares almost no equal. Back in the turn of the century, in the 1800s, it's estimated that we had maybe 1 to 2 million bighorn sheep roaming the western United States and Canada and Mexico. But we reduced those populations due to overhunting, market hunting, and primarily disease caused by the introduction of domestic sheep and goats into wild sheep range. We reduced those numbers down to about 25,000 in the 1960s and 1970s. Due to the efforts of organizations like the Fraternity of the Desert Bighorn and the Wild Sheep Foundation, along with our agency partners, we have increased those numbers threefold to 85,000 bighorn sheep, which are bighorn sheep and desert bighorn sheep. How did we do that? We worked with agency partners to first put a value on that wildlife. We created regulations, hunting regulations, treated the species with respect, and placed a value on it so all the people can benefit from those species.
In the early 20th century, the desert bighorn nearly disappeared. There was a moment when its population reduced to several hundred animals. In 1936, Major Frederick Burnham, the leader of Boy Scout movement, initiated a campaign to save the bighorn. Withdrawal of about 6,100 square kilometers of land in the state of Arizona from agricultural use and the establishment of a wildlife reserve there became the first step under the campaign. In the 70s, after the creation of the Wild Sheep Foundation, with the donor support of the richest hunters in the US, the Bighorn Preservation Program received the necessary financial backing. Millions of hectares of key bighorn habitats were withdrawn from agricultural use, a whole system of national wildlife areas was established, and the program of bighorn resettlement within historical habitats was executed. They caught the animals using helicopters and transported them to the areas where they had already disappeared. Today, Danielle and Ashley use helicopters to catch the bighorns to install radio transmitting collars. The operation usually takes less than 4 minutes. They catch the animal using a net, give it an anti-stress injection, install the radio chip and release the animal. Monitoring of populations of protected animal species constitutes an extremely important element of adaptive population management. Withdrawal rules and quotas are established by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Joint Commission under the state governor, consisting of scientists representing various research, conservation and educational organizations. To make proper decisions, scientists must have reliable information about the number and population density of animals in various regions, which is exactly the task of Ashley and Danielle, as well as other wildlife biologists of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The radar catches the radio transmitter's signal within the 20 kilometers radius, and the monitor shows the exact distance and direction. Together with their Kazakhstani colleagues, Ashley and Danielle are off in search of bighorn. Let's go! In the summer, the temperature in the Mojave Desert can rise to 50 degrees Celsius, but winter and spring are quite comfortable for ecotourism. The signal is coming from behind that mountain over there. Along the dry course of the stream there grows this smoke tree grove. Daniel says that Californian Indians smoked its bark prior to Europeans bringing tobacco here. How come? Isn't it vice versa? The Europeans borrowed tobacco from the Indians. Yes, but not in these ends, as tobacco never grew here. The migrants brought it here from the south. Could we try smoking the smoke tree? At your own risk.
Сейчас середина дня, и он, скорее всего, лежит.
It's midday now and we won't see it. We need to get ready not to scare it away. The signal is really close. A couple of stags are slowly moving along the hill slope. The bighorns have adapted well to desert life, but their shape and behavior are the same as of their relatives that had never left the mountains of Central Asia. It is hard to believe that just a week ago we filmed the Argali in eastern Kazakhstan region. It seems that our expedition has miraculously moved from winter into spring. The same bush thickets of Terasken, the mountain sheep behaving the same way, only of slightly different color and with a slightly different shape of horns. Let's move 2 weeks back on the time scale and 12,000 kilometers on the scale of distance. We are back in the Sao Mountains on the premises of Zaysan hunting farm in eastern Kazakhstan region. This is the monitoring site of an international project which aims to preserve mountain sheep. We are observing and filming the animals. In several months, the US experts will come here to help Kazakhstan's game managers to install radio collars on our Argali. Perhaps it will be our new friends Daniel and Ashley. Monitoring is the basis of adaptive wildlife population management. The word adaptive is key within the framework of this process. Different landscape zones and social and economic conditions require different approaches and solutions. For them to be rational and well thought out, it is necessary to collect reliable information. This is exactly the reason why inspectors and game managers go to the mountains every spring and fall, to count the Argali at least approximately and to collect data on gender and age structure of their herds, seasonal movements, death from predators and poachers. It is impossible to count all animals precisely, therefore the statistics data account for a certain margin of error. According to expert estimates, as of today in Kazakhstan there live the following numbers of animals: 12,330 Argali of central Kazakhstan subspecies, 2,500 animals of Tian Shan subspecies, 480 of Karatau subspecies, 1,500 of Trans-Caspian red sheep, which are also called Ustyurt mouflons, and single Altai mountain sheep. New technologies and expert assistance by the US colleagues will help Kazakhstani game managers to enhance their Argali monitoring system. The monitoring site of Zaysan hunting farm is located in the center of the Sao mountain ridge, between 1,800 and 3,000 meters above sea level. By car you can reach only the gamekeeper checkpoints because the conventional road ends exactly here. Further out, it is possible to move only on horseback. The saddlebags or korjins should be enough to fit a 1 week's stock of food, tents, equipment and gear. Going to each climatic zone offers its fringe benefits. We envy Ashley and Daniel, who are following the bighorns in the 50-degree summer heat of the Mojave Desert with radars in their hands. And the girls in turn envy us when we tell them about how we search for Argali in the Sao Mountains during spring and autumn counts. Of course, to spend a night in such a temperature in the woods, you need a really good sleeping bag. Many tourists and those who need to spend days in the wild within professional expeditions overcome a lot of hardships but still feel an emotional and physical uplift. For millions of years, our ancestors had been living in the wild. The human species had survived thanks to constant movement, battle for life and against pressures and threats. Our nervous system has been adapted to this way of life by evolution itself. Just recently we have moved into cities and behind our computers, but our body has not yet adapted to this tenor of life. It still needs physical exercise, fresh air, adrenaline and aesthetic pleasure that come as the result of communing with the wild nature. Many people think that in order to attract the spoiled Western eco-tourists, we need to build expensive guest houses, pave roads and invent catchy entertainment programs. The truth is that it is an obvious delusion. Lazy comfort is required for organizing the mass ocean beach tourism, whereas the fans of natural tourism, especially from the US, are more interested in the severe romantics of absolutely wild nature campaigns. No doubt, wild animals are a necessary attribute of primitive solitude. An opportunity to wander around with a backpack on your shoulders and live in a tent in deserted mountains among wild animals is turning into a refined and rather expensive luxury which can bring good money under the condition of proper management. The best entertainment programs for such tourists is when guides and tour organizers wisely relieve them of compelled communication, allowing a natural hideaway. The central part of the Saur Mountains ideally fits the US definition of wilderness area. It is absolutely wild and untouched, without roads and any anthropogenic activity except hunting and tourism. This is why this area attracted the attention of UNDP as a model site. The Wild Sheep Foundation is also interested in working in this wonderful wilderness corner. On this site, they plan to conduct experiments which could subsequently help to optimize the domestic nature conservation legislation. The rich and rather well-preserved fauna, including argali, morals, brown bears, boars and other animals living here, make this region attractive for foreign tourists. The morals prefer to keep to forests, while the argali enjoy open, low snow slopes. The Saur has kept its primitive purity first of all thanks to its poor accessibility. Although the time is changing. In the 21st century, with the new highly durable off-road vehicles and equipment and helicopters, inaccessibility does not always guarantee the nature against human impacts. We need other mechanisms and tools to preserve these unique virgin territories.
Kazakhstan has a great opportunity to really focus on conservation of wild sheep, wild goats, helping Kazakhstan people to explain and to develop that with us as a conservation organization. And then the second part, which can happen at the same time, is how do you fund this vision? Because you need money, you need dollars to fund conservation wherever you are in the world. And so to develop the vision and to develop a way to fund it is integral. It's interesting, the 2011 U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service survey of how much money is generated in the U.S. Between all the states by hunters, by fishermen, and wildlife enthusiasts is about $147 billion in 2011. From hunting and fishing only, it was close to $90 billion in 2011. So it's the way to develop, finding ways to develop sustainable funding sources for conservation is really important to help Kazakhstan develop or reach their vision.
The following point on the expedition's route is the Mojave National Wildlife Area. It was really easy to locate it using the GPS. Making a left here and we're almost there. Deborah Hudson, head of the research department, and Neil Derby, head of the wildlife department of the wildlife area, tell their Kazakhstani colleagues about legal, organizational, biological and financial basis of the park's operations. In the US, they have different types of especially protected areas like national parks, reserves, wildlife areas, national woodlands, wilderness areas and recreational lands.
National Park Service are created by Congress, and Congress decides when they found a national park whether it would be hunting allowed or not allowed. Now, by default, Park Service units, hunting is not allowed by default. But if Congress decrees that it will be allowed,
we are not clear about the differences between a wildlife area and a national park, and we ask Deborah to go into some details.
as a National Park Service, that we are to allow hunting in the preserve, Mojave Preserve.
And your particular one is allowed for hunting?
Yes.
So who sets the hunting rules?
The Game Agency and the government of the state of California will decide what are the seasons, what are the species that can be hunted, what are the bag limits, what are the requirements for license, how those licenses in the state of California. The state of California has the agency, which is the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. That is the biologists and the managers and the game warden.
Who forms your budget, if it is polite to ask?
We work by law with the state game agency. So we're the federal government, they're the state government, and we work together.
Construction of tourist facilities on the premises of the wilderness area is forbidden. For individual tourists, the entrance is free, but the wilderness area can cooperate with travel agencies organizing tours for nature lovers. Partner travel agencies pay the annual entrance fee of about $500. To the question about private hunting enterprises existing on the territory of the state of California, Deborah has replied negatively. There are no private hunting grounds in California, although there are private farms for breeding game on the privately owned and hence fenced-off land plots. The owners of such land plots can hunt their game, or we could say domestic animals, whenever they want. All hunting grounds and all animals living in the wild natural freedom belong to the state, and thus state organizations are responsible for their protection and preservation. Hunters have to buy state licenses to hunt. For example, the license to hunt white-tailed deer costs about $20 and you can buy it at any gas station. The bighorn hunting license costs $700, and since there are more people willing to hunt it than there are licenses, they are played on a lottery. A part of such licenses is sold via auctions. In fact, last year one hunter paid $340,000 for an auctioned bighorn hunting license. From California, the Kazakhstani team moves to Nevada to meet Brad Jefferson, director of Nevada office of the Wild Sheep Foundation, as well as to talk to Clint Bentley, a famous U.S. game manager. Clint manages the project on bighorn preservation of Nevada Fish and Wildlife Service. It appears that the Las Vegas that we saw in famous gangster movies has significantly changed since the days of Hunter Thompson. No loathing and no fear. The meeting with Brad and Clint is scheduled for 6 p.m. in the hall of the Bellagio Hotel, and so the Kazakhstani team has several hours to get acquainted with the city. Golden card holders can enjoy the posh restaurants, while the people who are used to expedition-type food can have a bite in a cheap burger place. While a quick bite can cost up to $12, a full-fledged lunch in an expensive food place will cost about $20 to $25. Tonight we will stay in an unusual hotel. We are in the hotel of the Bellagio Casino where they filmed the Ocean's 12 movie. Very interesting. It should be said that our idea of life in famous casinos with the emotions running high did not justify itself. We didn't run into George Clooney or Brad Pitt either. The casino tables were occupied with senior people moving their chips in boredom. And so at last, the long-awaited meeting with Bert Jefferson and Clint Bentley. The two legendary game managers will lead us on a real hunt for bighorns tomorrow. Instead of guns, we will have video and photo cameras, but the emotions awaiting us will be the same as the rich hunters have who pay huge money for bighorn hunting. We need to get a good night's sleep, as tomorrow we'll plunge ourselves into a real adventure.